Hi, my name is Lily Gatsky, and this is my critical thinking video for the Spring 2023 Intro to Marketing class. I took this class because I was passionate about marketing and I wanted to learn more about it. And as a business major, I wanted to know if marketing was the right emphasis for me. Over the entirety of the class, I have learned so much about marketing and have become even more passionate about marketing as a whole. And I just learned a lot through the project that we had to do for the class. The project that we had to do was called the Target Market Project. Now, this project was essentially a 70 to 80 page research project where we had to choose an industry and look at the two largest competitors within said industry and do research and analyze that. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking briefly about the project and just some examples of critical thinking, problem solving, and points where I've had to pivot throughout working on this project. So for my target market project, I chose to look at the fast food chicken industry, and I looked at the two largest competitors within said industry, which are Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's. Now, over the process of doing this project, I conducted 28 customer interviews, 15 professional interviews. I looked at 24 websites and 12 articles, and after gathering all of the data and the research, I proceeded to analyze my findings, and that is what my target market project was about. Now, before I had started the research, I had unknowingly made an assumption about what customers were feeling and what customers were thinking in regard to menu size. And I had made the assumption that customers preferred to have a larger menu over having a smaller menu. And I had begun to do the customer interviews. When I started to look at different websites, different articles, I realized that those findings were saying the exact opposite of what my assumption was. So that was a major point where I had to pivot and really decide whether I was going to disregard what I was finding or if I was going to humble myself in a way and prefer the truth over my first idea. The customer actually prefers to have a smaller, more concise menu than having a larger, more vast menu. So that was definitely a major point. Luckily, it was earlier on in the project, so it didn't affect my research too much, but it definitely was a really big learning point for me. Another part during this project that I had to learn from was when my professor gave me feedback on one of my drafts. One of the things that my professor had mentioned was that he thought it was interesting that the issue of taste had never come up within the customer interviews. And in one of the sections, we had to look at the decision-making factors, why customers would choose to go to Chick-fil-A over Cane's and vice versa. And my professor bringing that up made me realize that I had completely disregarded what the customers were telling me in my interviews, and it just made me realize that I was more interested in something more valuable, something more interesting in my mind, when in reality, what was more valuable to the customer was the taste of the chicken. And my professor being very honest with me and bringing that up made me realize that I had completely disregarded again what the customer was saying. Luckily, I was able to pivot and go back in my research and fix the data, put in what the customers had said about the taste, and I was able to pivot and come back from that. But it was definitely a big learning curve, just in the sense that it's so easy to disregard things because we have our previous made assumptions. One of the last things that I learned, and I think I learned this really up until I turned the project in, but it was just critically thinking about myself, about my abilities. Although it's not an example of looking at data, it was really affecting just how I worked on the project. What this project has taught me and what it's made me think about is that it wasn't about what my skills were. It was all about asking questions and having the humility to ask those questions and really listen and write down those answers and just write about it. Write what was said, and you need to look at what questions you asked, what the answers were, and just simply write it down. And I think that really encompasses what marketing is as a whole, and so that was definitely a big point where I had to critically think about the project, but also myself. So throughout this video, I've been able to talk about just some of the stories of critical thinking, problem solving, and points where I've had to pivot through the target market project. But really the most important thing is the target market project itself. I just would really encourage you to take a look and look at some of the things that I found through the research. Thank you for your time.